Hey there, this is Cindy, and thanks so much for joining us today. I'm so glad you're here, and I can't wait for you to hear today's episode. Before we dive in, though, I just wanted to share some ways that we can work together if you're looking to up-level your negotiation skills. I have everything from online to group to my signature one-on-one mastermind and VIP experiences available to help you better leverage your natural power to get more of what you want and deserve in life. So feel free to check out our website at Art of Feminine Negotiation if that's something that sounds interesting to you. And now the reason you're all here, on to our today's program. Really excited to introduce you to Allie Martin today. We're going to be talking about how to negotiate your visibility. So welcome, Allie. It's great to have you here.
Thanks so much for having me, Cindy. I'm so excited for this conversation.
Oh, I can't wait. I think it's such an important topic and one that just doesn't get talked about enough. So for our listeners out there, if you don't have the pleasure yet of knowing Allie Martin's a visibility expert, and she's the owner of Fame and Fortune, which you gotta love that, with female entrepreneurs in particular to help them elevate their brand and gain credibility and cash through proactive public relations and that strategic use of social media, which we sometimes shy away from. And she formerly worked in public relations for, not too shabby organizations like Amazon, Altac, Kendra Scott, and International Spa Association. So definitely coming with some chops in this area. So why don't you kickstart us off, Allie? Tell us, how did you come to this line of work?
It's really interesting. I actually just had a chance to reflect on it, and I thought, wow, I love how things come full circle. I was a musical theater nerd, if you will, my whole life. Thought I was going to do that for my career. And my parents said, maybe you can just do that as something for fun, and let's maybe do something that's similar. So I went to school for broadcast journalism and really found a love for telling stories. I really liked the aspect of journalism, like the 2020 or the Dateline NBC kind of approaches, where you really get to dive into a story and tell it to its fullest extent. I was offered a public relations role at Alltech right out of college and moved quickly into that, and was able to really find how public relations was really the flip side of journalism. And you are having the opportunity to tell the story from the company's perspective. And it just lit a fire on me, and I really found joy in that. And as you mentioned, moved on with other companies, and most recently left my role at Amazon and started Fame and Fortune so that I could do what I learned with all these other companies for female business owners themselves.
Yeah. Well, and kudos first, congratulations.
Thank you.
And I love, there's so much in there, because it's interesting that you say, I bet most of our listeners out there had something they were passionate about when they were young, and they got told by people who cared about them with all the best of intentions that perhaps they ought to think of it as a hobby, myself included, totally guilty of it. And I particularly love the passion that you speak of story. And it's relatively new, I think, that we're seeing this focus on storytelling as an art. And really, it's one of the oldest forms, back from our First Nations and Indigenous, like the power of a great story. And as someone who loves to write, I'm all about stories. So can't wait to hear what you have to say about that. And why don't we start off with you telling us a bit as well about, why is visibility important, and what are some of the benefits of being visible?
Visibility is the most impactful and quickest way to change the trajectory of how people view you and your business.
Yeah.
And I'll say that again.
Yes.
Visibility is the most impactful and quickest way to change the trajectory of how people view you and your business. So it is an instant authority and credibility builder for you and your business. I always like to refer to visibility as a trophy on your shelf. So once you've been featured in Forbes, you put that Forbes trophy on your shelf, and it lasts with you for the rest of your life. Yeah. It never gets taken away. You will, for the rest of your life, be able to say, I've been featured in Forbes. Yeah. So these are things that stay with you. It is just that act of becoming a trusted and reputable source. And, that can be in terms of the media, it can be in terms of your customers, your followers on social media. But really, that visibility is getting yourself in front of the right people so that they can see you for the true value that you hold.
Oh, I love it. And I love that you called it a trophy. And I'm going to want to circle back to that in a bit, because I think as women in particular, they tend to shy away from bragging about their trophies. So I'll definitely want to unpack that a bit. But why don't we just start by talking about maybe some of the ways in which people shy away from visibility more generally?
Yeah, when it comes to social media, I have found that people are really pushing you to go in that path of video. And so many people are shying away from video. They're saying, I don't want to be on video. The number of clients that I hear that say, I don't want to be on video. And I think, well, that's, you represent your business. You are the face of your business. And even if you aren't a business owner, that's how people build these relationships with you. It's marketing is all about the know, like, and trust factor. So knowing about you is just simply awareness. Liking you is simply building upon that know. But trust is something that takes a really long time to do if you aren't on video. If you can get on video and you can show the behind the scenes of who you are, that really allows people to deepen that relationship with you. And the same thing goes for media. Exactly to your point is people don't want to brag about their accomplishments. And so the media don't know about their accomplishments. So therefore they're not reporting on them. So really what I like to teach and what I like to empower women to do is to pitch themselves to the media. Be your own publicist, if you will, so that they can find out about your accomplishments, find out about the amazing things you're doing so that they can help you tell your story to the right people.
Yeah, so nice. And when you talk about that trust piece, it's funny because I know, and maybe this is just a generational thing, but growing up, it was all about perfection, which I think then there's that fear of being on, when in fact the opposite is true now. It's that vulnerability, that raw, real, authentic, hey, I'm human, check me out, warts and all, that seems to be resonating most. Or maybe I'm off base. Is that on track?
Cindy, I had this exact conversation with somebody earlier today. Going live, showing the behind the scenes is completely contrary to what we know marketing to be. Marketing is all about presenting yourself in the most professional manner, a perfection, truly like crafting it to just this ultimate piece. And yet here we are saying, oh, just turn on the live feature of your Instagram and just go live. And people are like, wait, what? Like, oh, you don't have to have talking points. Just get on there and start talking to people. They'll write their comments in. And it's like really hard for some people to grasp when they've understood marketing to be, no, you should put your best foot forward. But I truly believe in that trust factor, and even showing that you're drinking a cup of coffee in the morning, showing the book that you're reading when you go to bed. People can connect with those different ways. It's no longer about, I have a need and you have a service, and so I'm going to hire you.
Yeah.
It's about, oh, you like the same type of books I like. Oh, I might need to read that book after you. Oh, I want to talk to you about that book now that we've both read it. And oh, you drink coffee too in the morning. How do you like to drink your coffee? It really deepens a relationship that we've actually never been able to go to before with traditional marketing.
I love that. I hadn't thought of that actually, that really personalizing it, where it's something as simple as our routines in life. So they feel like they're getting this glimpse as, best buds just hanging around, sharing an experience together. I think that's powerful. And why don't we talk to the elephant in the room? Like, what, in my experience, women in particular are so deeply conditioned to shying away from standing in that spotlight, from taking that visibility. So what's your experience? Like, what stops women from stepping into the fullness of their visibility?
They truly feel like they are going to be judged.
Yeah.
So they feel like either their story is not meaningful, it's not powerful, it's nothing special, so there's no point in telling it. Or if I tell this very deeply personal story, I'm going to be judged for it.
Yeah.
And how I combat that is encouraging you to think back to a time when you've heard somebody else's story, when you've heard them be vulnerable and it's impacted you, it's allowed you to say, I'm not alone.
Yeah.
Those are the things we need to be telling, not only for our own publicity, our own fame and fortune, but for the power of helping others. And if you could prescribe to the notion that we as women should uplift other women, we can uplift other women by telling your story. That's exactly how it's done.
Yeah, so good. And I mean, when you think of it, look at Brene Brown. I mean, exploded on the scene by A, being vulnerable, and B, talking about vulnerability, right? Like, so simple and clearly so powerful. It resonated at a really deep level. And I wonder sometimes when we talk about that conditioning, like, if you think of it, it's not that long ago in our human history that women who really stepped into their power historically, they were burned at the stake as witches. And you got to wonder at some level that stem cell memory that carries on that maybe makes us a little hesitant to maybe step out into that bright spotlight.
That's a good point, Cindy. And I do think there is still a part of society that when we are bragging on ourselves, people look at us maybe with a jealous tone of,
Yeah.
well, why not me? Why are they doing that? Maybe they shouldn't be doing that. And so I do think there is that hesitation, but the best way that I have found to be able to break past that and move on is be able to just push that aside and tell your story so that you can show other women it's okay to do so as well.
Yeah. And ironically, I think it's those women who really do it boldly and step into it who actually get less resistance to it when you do it with such confidence. It's, and it starts as early as kindergarten though, right? Like young boys, their social status improves when they beat on their chest and make themselves larger than life. And young girls learn pretty quickly that, ooh, I think I'm going to be socially shunned if I start bragging on myself here. Maybe I better tone it down a little bit. And then that starts a lifelong pattern. So now, do you see differences in visibility based on gender? What's been your experience around that?
Yes, I definitely see a willingness for men to say, this is who I am, this is what I've done, this is where I'm going, and I have no problem sharing that message, to women saying that with a tendency or a hesitancy to say, is this really an important story? Is this really an important message?
Yeah.
And even wondering if, well, it's nothing unique. It's nothing special.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of people feel like we need to have that Brene Brown story. Although I love the stories that she does share, it is seemingly, kind of meaningless moments that actually end up teaching her a really big lesson. But they think they need to have this movie kind of story where they've come from poverty and now risen out of the ashes and look at all they've been able to accomplish. But simply the act of saying, I didn't believe in myself, I trusted myself, and I was able to achieve this is really something that really people just need to hear. And a story as simple as that can be all that you need to be able to kind of get that wheel going to where more stories are coming to you that you start to attach yourself to those lessons that you're learning and go, ooh, this is another good one that I need to be able to share. It kind of is like a wildfire, and it just picks up as you start to do it more.
Yeah, so good. That really resonates with me because I will say so many of my clients, that's the fear. Like, I don't have a really big mission. I don't have a really big story. And I find one of the stories that seem to most resonate from my perspective sharing is, I often joke about the fact that early in my career as a lawyer for years, my clients called me the Barracuda. They meant it as a compliment and I naively wore it like a badge of honor. But boy, there was a high cost that came with that, right? It just wears us down, ultimately our very sense of self. And that moment, the story for me was just one day having a simple conversation with my son, my middle child, and I could see he was getting really frustrated. And I was like, what the heck? And at one point, and I'm thinking to myself, like, this is a strange reaction to this conversation we're having. And at one point he's like, for God's sake, Mom, like, does every conversation with you have to be an argument that you win? It was a simple moment, but it was a profound shift for me. I believe it was the genesis of me starting total different trajectory about the art of feminine negotiation, what it means. So you're right. It's sometimes those simple moments in our life that can be a profound shift that resonate with other people. So I love that insight. So yeah, thanks for that. Now, I often say that our first and most important negotiation is the one with ourselves, like negotiating our own mindset. So I'd love, what tips do you have for our listeners out there on how to negotiate their mindset to help them step into that limelight?
Yeah, that's a really great point, Cindy. And I think you're absolutely right, because whenever I am telling individuals to pitch themselves to the media to help tell their stories, the very first tip that I do give is to be authentic and true. So be able to share that authentic story and be able to share it in a unique way. So just because we feel like it may not be that special or may not be that unique, we can still make a unique twist on it and a unique turn, but making sure you remain authentic. You never want to be able to come right out of the gate and make this story more than what it really was or different, because it will always come out in the end. So remaining authentic, but to get past those hurdles, that mental game that we play with ourselves, I really like to encourage people to watch the news and see the stories that are being told and actually look at it from the lens of seeing the stories that are playing out in each of the news segments that are happening, even your local news, your national news, even listening to podcasts and hearing the stories that are told in that manner and understanding how you can put yourself in the shoes of those guests and be able to tell your story in that same manner of, okay, they had this similar experience and I can relate myself over here. And so I can kind of see where they had that journey and they were able to share that. So why can't I? Yeah. So if you can really start to model that and look at it from that perspective, it can allow you to see that it's okay to tell your story. There's other people out there doing it. And so why not you?
I love that. I really like that. And since we're talking about the news, what are your thoughts on a term I'd heard relatively recently, newsjacking, like taking a news story and then putting your sort of spin on it or from your business perspective on it? What are your thoughts on that?
This is fantastic. It's very strategic and I love it because it allows you to step in as an authority and a leader in your industry. So if you see a news article that is out there that's trending, there's lots of buzzwords around it, and you can offer insight to it. And you can offer that insight either on a podcast or on your social media, even in your email newsletter to clients. This is an opportunity where you can shine as an authority figure, as a leader, because you're giving your perspective on something that's happening. And I will say, Cindy, that actually it gives you the opportunity to be on the news. If you are commenting on something that is trending currently, while it may be national news, the local news always wants to cover those types of topics, but they need a local angle. So if you're just getting started with media and you haven't had any local experience, that's a great way to get started by saying, hey, I know this happened in New York City, but I'm going to be able to talk about it in Shelbyville, Kentucky, where I am, and be able to address that with the news and give my local perspective.
Oh, I'm going to have to hire you, Allie. We're going to have to connect because it's funny. Like recently, I know, we don't have to get into it because God knows it's got enough coverage already, but the slap incident, with Will Smith and Chris Rock. And I was just like, oh my gosh, with everything going on in the world, the fact that people are so fascinated with this. But then I wrote a blog post about it thinking, let's take some positive spin on this. Here's some negotiating lessons that we can learn from the slap and taking some of the principles I teach around negotiation. But I just put it out as my own little blog post, but you probably would have gotten much more traction out of that. So
I think that's exactly the right frame of mind that you need to have whenever you're looking at hot topics, trending activities, things that are going on in the world. How can you give perspective to it? How can you add your insight, your voice to the story that's happening? I'll give you another example. We had International Women's Day back in March, and I was able to contact several of my local TV stations and said, I'm a female business owner. I work with female entrepreneurs to help them with their visibility. I'd love to come on and talk about how we should be celebrating women on this International Women's Day. And I had all of these interviews. And again, it's an international holiday. It has nothing to do with where I'm based, but I'm able to give a local perspective for these local channels. And it's exactly the type of stories they're looking to tell. And quite honestly, they need more people stepping forward saying, I have a story to tell. Let me tell it. They will give you the platform that you are looking for.
Such great advice. And speaking of media, I know like media exposure obviously is essential to any business of any size. So what tips do you have on how to be your own sort of best publicist to get yourself out there?
Yes. Well, as you mentioned that I do have a program called Be Your Own Publicist Now at beyourownpublicistnow.com. But whenever you're looking to pitch yourself to the media, the best place to start is to remember it's not about you. So I guess we've been spending this whole time talking about you have a story to tell, you have a story to tell. As soon as you are wanting to talk to the media, you have to turn it on its head and tell them what the listeners, the viewers, the readers are going to get out of having you as a featured guest on their program. So I really like to frame pitches where I can say, so take me for an example, I can go on your program and talk about ways you can pitch yourself to the media, ways that you can increase visibility in your business. I'm talking about the ways that their listeners, their viewers are going to find resources and value out of that segment. The goal of every media outlet out there is that their listeners, their viewers, their readers will return time and time again, because they walk away from a segment or an article and go, wow, that gave me so much goodness. So they want as much value as they can pack into a 3-minute TV interview as possible. So remembering it's not about you and phrasing your pitch in that manner so that they can get as much value as possible.
That's so good. And what tips do you have on, because I'm sure for a lot of our listeners out there, they're like, well, how do I get that coverage? And I mean, I'm hearing you say, just pitch yourself. So like, any tips on crafting that perfect pitch? Or
yeah, that one tip would be to find a stat or an idea, research around what you are supporting. So media love having a tangible statistic or research that they can help report out to help support the story, the message of that interview. So if you work in a particular industry and research has come out to help support the message that you're wanting to share, that would be a great stat to add into your email pitch. And email pitches don't need to be overwhelming. I truly believe they should be just a couple sentences long, have a few bullets, reiterate whatever supporting information you do have. I actually have a client that is wanting to get national coverage for a particular health issue. And so we've identified a doctor that can help support that. So while my client is not a doctor, we've identified somebody that can help be a part of that segment. So the media have a million things to do. They get hundreds of pitches every single day. So anytime you can say, I have it all laid out for you. Here's the questions you can ask me. Here's the doctor you can also interview to help support this. They're going to love you and they're going to say, yes, 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 yes. We need to talk. I want to do this. If you make it hard for them, if you say, here's an idea I have. What do you think? Is this even a good idea? They're going to say, I don't have time for this. So whatever you can do to make it easy is the key.
Oh, so good. So let's say, just so to put some meat on the bones, like for me, for example, if it was about the art of feminine negotiation, I'm wanting to pitch it, maybe in the context, especially now with the Great Resignation, for women negotiating their salaries or something, sharing a stat as a hook that, men presented with an initial salary offer, 62% of them will negotiate for more as compared to only 7% of women. So take that stat, hone it down, and then put, hey, here's the angle for the story, boom, 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 so that it's all ready for them to go. Is that the idea?
You've got it. And even being able to say, here's 3 or 4 questions I could be asked, and here's how I would answer them. Again, that gives them a very clear idea of the path that this interview will go. They can visualize it in their minds. They can see the host asking these questions, and they start to visualize it, and they immediately are able to say, yes, let's do this. So you have got it, Cindy. That's exactly how you should approach it.
Okay, no, great advice, Allie. Thanks so much for that. And so tell us a little bit about your signature sort of visibility systems. You had mentioned one aspect of it already, the program you have there about being your own best publicist. Tell us a little bit more about your system.
I have a framework called the Publicity Climb, and it really is this idea that if you have never done media before, you can reach the point of being able to do national media by the end of this framework. So really, I break down media into 3 different areas. So local, which would be even your newspapers, your TV, your radio. The second would be industry. So that is your podcast, that is your industry publications. And then finally, national. That's where everybody wants to be. And once you've gotten the bug, if you are very hesitant right now, once you do a few media interviews, you'll get bitten by the publicity bug and you'll want to be doing more. So don't worry, you'll get there. But you can reach that national pinnacle by being able to step up your approach. So it's really this idea of doing local media, fine-tuning and improving your skills as an interviewee, taking those interviews and being able to present those to industry publications and outlets so that you can become a leader in your industry. So you're moving away from just being a leader or a figurehead in your local market to your industry, and then from industry on national. And a lot of people want to write books one day, and this is really the stair-step approach you have to take if you want to sell a lot of books with your book and your story.
Yeah. Ah, perfect timing. My Art of Feminine Negotiation is coming out in August. So I'll be reaching out to you about some of
Oh,
that.
congratulations.
Thank you. Yes, it's been a long time coming, and I finally got my button gear. I've got the publisher lined up. Everything's good to go. So now, but definitely most publishers now they don't publish the way they used to. So it really does fall on the individual. So I'm glad you mentioned about books, because for many of our listeners out there, you probably already have a book idea, or it's something that's on your bucket list that, you've got that book idea in you. And that leads me to, what are some other businesses or area? Like some of our listeners may be going, well, this doesn't really apply to me, but I think visibility is important for everyone. So what would you have to say to that, Allie?
I mean, I'm a service provider, so it's really hard sometimes for service providers to understand how we can really even insert ourselves into a local market's message. But I made the point of the International Women's Day. There is a holiday for every single day of this year. So you look at those holidays and identify where your industry, you can be that spokesperson, that voice for the industry. I even like for you to think about where you can take in a stand, have a controversial opinion about a topic. That's another great way to get featured, to get noticed by the media. If you can say, hey, I know everybody's opinion is over here, but I actually think this over on this side. And then they'll say, wow, well, we need to talk to you about that. So, and back to the point of, if you are coming out with a book, you need to start sooner rather than later. You luckily, Cindy, already have a publisher, but I know I have quite a few clients that come to me and say, I tried to get a publisher for my book, and they're saying I either don't have enough followers on social media or within their network, or I don't have enough media features out there about this topic, or both. And so really growing your social media accounts is something you can be doing now. If you have a book on your heart, if you have that inkling, that earning that you feel like you want to do one day, growing your social media now, but getting those media features, starting at the local level, get those now, so that when you're trying to get a publisher, you can say, here are all the media features where I have been featured talking about this exact topic. And that just helps support the idea and why you are an authority and a credible figure in your industry to be writing about this topic.
Such good advice. And I had forgot that, actually, because I do remember along that journey, like a lot of publishers were saying you need a minimum 10,000 followers before we'll even look at you. Some of them were 100,000, a lot of literary agents as well. Like, unless you have a massive following, they just do not have the time, not willing to put in the time. They want a ready-made market that's available, that you've got that visibility already built. So I love that. But any other tips that you have on sort of negotiating with media once you do that, or navigating the whole marketing and social media visibility piece?
This is the piece that most people leave out, and it is follow up, follow up, follow up. I have actually recently interviewed several industry leaders in the media world and said, what's an appropriate number of follow-ups that we can be doing? Because I've always kind of left it after 3, okay, they're maybe not interested. They said, follow up until we tell you no.
Yeah.
They said, if we haven't told you no, that either means we've pitched it to our editor and we're waiting for them to get back to us. It's not the right time, but we want to do that in the future. And they said, even if we don't work with you now, but we come back to you later and we get an assignment, we're going to look in our inbox and do a search for that keyword or that topic. And if your emails are in our inbox where you've pitched us that idea before, we're going to go right back to you and want to work with you on that story. Yeah. So I think a lot of people are hesitant to follow up because they've sent one email and they don't get a response, and they think, okay, well, they must not be interested. But I can, without a doubt, tell you, you follow up until you get a no. They will tell you no if it's not the right contact or it's not the right fit. But if they don't, you keep at them.
Oh, such good advice. And particularly for our women listeners out there, because I think we tend to be more likely to have a fear of hearing that word no. It's something that we really need to desensitize ourselves to. I mean, I love Richard Fenton's book on that, Go for No, right? Just as a way to desensitize yourself to the word no. And from a negotiation perspective, I know a lot of negotiation experts say, hey, the negotiation hasn't even started until you hear the word no. And no doesn't mean never. No maybe just means not right now. And feel free to follow up and be persistent. So I think that's some great advice. And I wanted to make sure to touch on as well, because I know you produce and host the podcast Selfish, which I love that title, by the way. And I think that's dedicated to self-care and following your dreams, which I am a big fan on. It goes back to that negotiating your mindset. So tell us a bit about the show and what inspired it for you.
I started it 7 years ago, believe it or not, and it actually was the catalyst for me to go out on my own whenever I had the opportunity, because I had interviewed so many amazing individuals that told their story of bravery and why they decided to go out on their own and start their own businesses, and how they're able to balance that work and life and love and everything that life throws at you. And really, I like to present Selfish in the manner of, here's these amazing people doing amazing things. Here's how they practice self-care. Here's how they fit it in to their lives. And really, I like to kind of leave people with the idea that self-care should be more like a bicycle rather than a balance beam.
Yeah.
When you think about a balance beam, things are either one side or the other, and you can't really ever get that centralized balance. But with a bicycle, I really like the analogy, because you're thinking about, you pedal and you put weight on one side, and then when you're done on that side, you put weight and you put energy on the other side, and that's what keeps you moving forward. And if you spend too much time or put too much weight on one side, you will fall off, and you'll have to get back on and try it again. But this idea that balance isn't truly keeping everything equal at all times. It's this idea of, I might have to put energy on this in this area of my life, but then I need to give that energy back to the other areas of my life in order to move forward.
Oh, I love that bicycle analogy. I had never heard that before. And with your permission, I'm going to borrow that.
Please.
Yes, I think it's so important. And again, for our listeners out there, because I'm hearing a lot of people now talk about, in this sort of thought leader industry about women and self-care, that, oh, everybody's talking about work-life balance and there's no such thing. It's a myth. And I'm like, well, I don't love that message. So for me, I've been talking a lot about the fact that think of balance as a verb rather than some state that you hit. And then once you've got it forever. You're always in a state of actively balancing. So the bicycle analogy is so perfect for that, Allie. I really like that. And again, that all areas, because we tend to think, okay, I've got career and I've got home, but we don't think about all of those other, like, health and fitness, finance and wealth, our quality of life and experiences, spiritual, whatever that means for you, our intimate relationships, our family, like all of these different areas to make sure that you're, as you say, pushing down here now and then pushing down here so that you're staying fulfilled in all of the aspects of your life. I think that's gorgeous. Thank you for that share.
You're welcome.
And I always like to sort of end with the question. I can't believe how quick this time has gone. And thank God you speak quickly like me. So you've given us so many fabulous gems here. What is one of the greatest mindset shifts that you've ever had in your life? And it doesn't have to be on this particular issue, frankly. It can be on any one of those moments that shifts the way you look at things.
That truly anything is possible if you work towards it. I have a mentor that used to always share the message, hard work prevails. We don't have to be the smartest in the room. We don't have to be the most talented in the room. But if we can guarantee that we will work harder than anybody else in that room, we can achieve anything we put our minds to. And I think that really opens up the doors to the fact that we have everything at our fingertips that we need. We just have to work hard towards that goal. And that really kind of puts aside any barriers that we might have put on ourselves previous to that. And that's really the mentality that I try to approach everything I do in work and in my own business is just that I don't have to be the smartest. I don't have to be the most talented, but I can guarantee that I can work harder more than anybody else.
I like that a lot. And even just stepping into it, right? As you were saying that, it reminded me about just rather than sitting back or feeling less than or feeling nervous or letting those fears overwhelm you, staying in your comfort zone, just know that anything is possible if you step into it, right? If you just I think that's gorgeous. I love that. So, well, Allie, thank you so much. I know I'm going to be re-listening to the replay and taking even better notes. There are so many great nuggets here, and I've been doing this for a while, and I learned a lot here today. So thank you so much for sharing with our listeners. Really appreciate that.
Thank you so much for having me, Cindy.
And for our listeners out there, I invite you as well to re-listen to the episode, because we can all benefit from more visibility in our life. And Allie has just dropped some absolute gems for you here and how you can step into that. Some really simple ones too, some practical, easy to follow ways that you can increase your visibility and increase your brand. And, you know, whether it's a book or your business or whatever it is that you're pursuing in your life, find a way to get visibility about it, because, you know, they say if you build it, they will come, but they won't come if they don't know about it. So getting yourself out there. And definitely, I encourage you to go and learn more about Allie. You can check her out on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, or LinkedIn at the Allie Martin. And we'll make sure to have the links for that in our show notes here as well. And Allie, I'll ask you to send me too your links for some of the programs so that we can put those links. So if people are interested, they can directly access some of those programs you offer. They sounded absolutely fantastic. And I'm sure for all of you, you got loads of value from this episode. Make sure to subscribe to the podcast if you haven't already done that, and share it with anyone that you think could get value. And I would say the podcast generally, and in particular for this episode, if you know somebody who's not stepping into the full force of their visibility, make sure you do them the favor of sharing this episode so they can have some hot tips on how to start doing that. Because let's face it, who couldn't benefit from that in their life? And make sure to join our Women on Purpose community. If you're not already in it, just go to facebook.com/groups, Women on Purpose community. We drop lots of resources in there for you as well on how to negotiate your best life. And that is a wrap for this episode. So until next time, go forth and negotiate your best life on your terms so you can stop missing out and start getting more of what you want and deserve from the boardroom to the bedroom. Until next time, take care.